Welcome to Retirement Ramblings. I'm Scott, and today is day 116 on my countdown to retirement. So this morning I got up and I made some bacon, which I ended up putting on an everything bagel, and my wife put hers on an English muffin, and then I saved the remainder of the bacon for use later in the week on a salad. Then I went up to the attic and got a flathead shovel so that I could then go out to the road where I had pressure washed our driveway, and all the debris and miscellaneous stuff flowed down and went in both directions. And I tried to spray it into, basically a pile where all the dirt and debris would stay. So then I went out, now that it's dried overnight, I went out with the shovel and I scooped up the debris and such, and then I scattered it across the grass area on both of my different, well, on my lawn, but from both of my neighbors. Then I got a broom and a dustpan, and I swept up anything that the shovel couldn't pick up, and I also spread that around. And then I got out my blower, and then I finally blew off any of the things that I couldn't get with either the shovel or with the broom and dustpan. And then I made sure to blow it into the grass in a way that wasn't visible, so that it would sink down, and fill in, any gaps where the sand and other debris was at. Then I went and got my ShopVac, which needed to be cleaned, and took that outside and put it on the grass adjacent to where we have our pine straw. And then got a respirator and a garbage bag, opened up the ShopVac, did my best to keep everything from the ShopVac into the garbage bag. And then I removed the internal air filter, and then used a hard brush to brush everything off the filter and then into the trash bag. Cleaned all that stuff up. And then I took the ShopVac when I put everything back together, plugged it in, made sure that it was getting the maximum suction that I needed. It was. So then I tied up all the crap that I took out of there and in the garbage bag, and then put that into the trash container. Then I washed off all the different utensils because I was covered in stuff. The hard brush was covered, like it was all over the place. So anyway, I got all that taken care of. Then washed me, my arms and hands and everything. Got a nice cold Diet Coke so I could cool myself down. And then I stripped off my clothes, went and jumped in the shower. And then once I was done, I sat down and talked to my sister. She was out in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, looking at property. They found the property that they liked. They put an offer on the property. We talked about the particular, she sent me a link to the property. I looked at it. We talked about different components of that. And, she's not sure that their offer would be accepted. There's another offer on the property that's at a lower price, but has no contingencies. And they put a contingency for a structural engineer to inspect the property, in advance of their purchase. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but they're flying back from Steamboat to her home tomorrow. So hopefully, I'll hear from her and they'll let us know whether or not it was accepted, or they'll go on to a different property to potentially put an offer on, because they saw many over this weekend. But it happens. This has been a long-standing desire of my sister's to have a place in Colorado. She's an avid skier, really likes to go out there. My brother-in-law, not so much, but they've been talking about this for kind of forever. So, he's looking finally to potentially pull the trigger. So we'll see what happens. Then, after speaking to her, I had bought some yellow squash the other day, and I decided that I was going to make squash and onion mixture as a side dish for dinner later tonight. So I got out a mandolin and I sliced down 4 different yellow squash, and then I took a half of a large onion, sliced that down on the mandolin, and then ultimately ended up chopping the onions into smaller pieces. and then basically melted some butter in a pan, uh, heated up the onions till they were translucent, then added in the squash, and then basically continued to cook that until it basically releases all of its water. Then I dumped the entire mixture out into a colander, drained it out, put more butter into the pot, poured the contents of the squash and onions back into that pot, and continued cooking them until basically the squash was pretty tender and basically falling apart, which is the way that my wife and I like it. And then added in a bunch of pepper, a little bit of garlic powder, cooked that, and then when it was finally done, put that into a Pyrex container for storage. Waited for it to cool down, put it then on a cork board or cork pad, so I could put it in the fridge and not have to worry about it cracking the glass, whatever, the glass shelf that's in there, so that we would have it ready at dinner time. And then I sat down and started watching Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley. Really, I mean, I was skipping around. The only thing I really wanted to see, which I watched, was the interview that Norah O'Donnell did with Amy Associate Justice, I guess, Amy Coney Barrett. So she was, talking about her book that she's getting ready to release, or it's being released imminently. Anyway, wanted to watch that, which I did. Then I started making lunch, which ended up being a half a pound hamburger and then some fries that I made in the air fryer. And then we ended up sitting down watching I don't know if it was a new version or a recorded version of Hometown with Ben and Erin Napier while we were eating lunch. And then following that, I watched a YouTube video titled, "Here's What's Changing with Social Security in 2025. The link, I think it was by CBS. Anyway, the link will be in the description down below if you're interested in taking a look at it. And then my mom texted me that my niece's boyfriend went over to her place and hung the temporary paper privacy shades that she needed to put up in her master bedroom, while she's waiting for her permanent blinds to be produced and delivered and installed. So he hopped over there, and she said it only took him like 20 minutes to do the installation. So good for him. Appreciate that. And then I ended up calling my mom to catch up on just the activities of the day. And then after that, my son texted me that he had just finished putting together, I guess, a sit-stand desk for his wife in her new office. So I was happy to hear that. And apparently my wife had actually talked to my son and daughter-in-law when I was out doing some other stuff. So I didn't participate in that call. And then for dinner, I ended up making a New York strip on the grill, and then had that along with the reheated squash that I made earlier in the day. And then I sat down to try and figure out, because I hadn't, I've been setting aside cash for the last couple of years, trying to build kind of my cash bucket for when we retire, so that if the market tanks, I don't have to worry about as much about sequence of return risk and things like that. But when I did it, I didn't consider the fact that my wife actually gets Social Security. So I was looking at it from how much money versus zero do I need to take out for us to be able to live on out of our portfolio to live our lives without having to have a change in our style of living. And so anyway, today I sat down and did the kind of back of the napkin math to say, okay, well, my wife gets this amount of money for her Social Security. When I back that off of our actual expenses for the year, how much money do I need? And then how many years of cash do I have to cover that in a market downturn? And because I hadn't considered that before, I'm probably going to need to revisit my allocations, which I think I've shared with you guys before. I have 70-30 allocation for equities to bonds, or to fixed income slash cash in my IRAs, and 80/20 in my Roths. I'm probably going to increase the equity components in both of those. So maybe go 80/20 in my IRA and 90/10 in my Roth. After doing these calculations, I'll get more granular and figure out whether I really want to do that or not. But that's kind of like my current thinking at the moment. Anyway, that was my day today. So that's my update for today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section down below or drop me an email at myretirementramblings@gmail.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great evening. And until tomorrow, take care.